Well, look at you. Look at you all out there. Hello. Now you're going to tell me why you called us all together. Huh? Anyway, it's good to see you all in the mind's eye on Friday night. You know, the very fact that we get together is something. The Quakers, you know about the Quakers? All these mystics, as we say, St. Martin of Tours, remember? 397 AD, all mystics come from the same country and speak the same language. So the Quakers will sit there for a half hour in silence. And I was thinking maybe we should do the same thing. Swami, let me just tell the people out there in computer land one of my favorite Quaker jokes. Now you got to admit, a religion, a river of faith that's based on silence, that's to say they sit in silence. And theoretically that could be the whole service. And it would be a wonderful thing because they're communing with the inner self. And when somebody's moved to speak, Quaker meeting, he will speak. From within, often it's the elders. You know, they have an elder bench or something. And they call it the inner light because it was the inner light with George Fox in England sitting illumined on a haystack in England. And he came to the colonies. Oh, the Quakers, wonderful. So this fellow in the office, Swami, you remember he heard that one of his colleagues, he'd known him for quite a few years, is a Quaker. Now that intrigued him a lot. That door needs to be shut, and I would appreciate somebody doing that. So anyway, he went up to him one day as they were preparing to go home, at 5 o'clock. He said, hello there. He said, yeah, hey, hi. He said, somebody told me just now that you're a Quaker. I said, that's right, yes. He said, we call ourselves the Society of Friends. He said, is that right? He said, yes, that's what we do. He said, well, do you have, regular meetings? He said, that's what we call them. We call them meetings on Sunday morning. As a matter of fact, he said, would you like to come? He said, yes, I really would. I'd just love to come to your meeting. So he came, and it was 11 o'clock, and they're all sitting around there. And so the fellow picks the lid off his sleeve, looks up at the corner of the room, and after quite a while, he elbows his friend, because nothing's happening, He said, when does the service begin? And his friend said, after the worship ends. Well, good evening. Look who's here now. We can start. Now you're going to tell us why you called us all together. All right.
What do you want me to do?
Oh, well, you might chant up in a little storm so they're not to think of a Quaker
Are we
meeting.
moving this now?
Yes, we are.
Back to that one, okay. Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tejasvi Navaditamastu Mavid Vishavahai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May Brahman protect us. May he guide us and give us strength and right understanding. May love and harmony be with us all. Peace, peace, peace. All right, so did you get to this spot here last time?
I think I can help you quickly, but I realized that this was coming, and somehow here we are. You know how we do people kind of spontaneously. Are you saying you know your forefathers were?
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
Yeah. Who has four fathers? I only had one.
Well, don't you remember my story about the lady? This is a real story. She lived over in the apartment house across the street. And she kind of, you might say, filled the apartment house. I took it over, filled her spirit. So one time, she was heard to say in my presence, that she was one of our then Swami and Swami's foremost disciples. And I turned to someone and said, well, if she is, I'd like to see the other three.
Yeah.
There you go.
You know that your forefathers were the first preachers of great religion, is there an A there? Of which inundated the continent of Asia in earlier times and propagated by Buddha, the great founder of Buddhism. You know that Sri Jnana Dipankar was born in Vajrayogini and Shilabhadra, a great professor of the Nalanda University, was a native of your land. So it is your duty to take up the banner of Sri Ramakrishna and spread his universal gospel of truth all over the world. I want from among you a dozen of young men who will go to establish centers in Japan and in other parts of Europe, like Germany and other lands, speaking their language and teaching them the universal religion of Vedanta, which was taught by Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna.
Now, Swami, believe it or not, I realized that I did not put the pasted or posted or whatever you call it, didn't put that when we stopped. But that was really quite a thing when he said that, because I was reminded of Jesus saying to his disciples, the field is the world. You see, Judaism was a national faith, right? In the bottle. The genie's in the bottle. But it escaped. And the same thing has happened in our lifetimes almost, to the religion, the great awareness, the great experience of God, which had its flowering in India. The genie's out of the bottle, and what Jesus said to his disciples was he wanted them to go shine their light on the Gentiles. So we got at least as far as the European character on page 262. I'm going to say that go to a European community, okay? Can you see it down there? First of all, after truthfully, you should also practice brahmacharya. Okay, how about that?
Okay. You should also practice brahmacharya, that is, control upon your nature and habit. Go to a European community, and there you will find young boys of 25 or even 30, and the young women of 25 or 30 who are pure and chaste. So regain your ideal and educate yourselves with the moral and spiritual laws. That is your religion. You must note that your religion and practical duties in everyday life are one. I have preached for you in the foreign countries that we, the Indians, eat religion, drink religion, live religion, and sleep religion. And now I have come back to tell you that you must do that, because that is our ideal. It is your duty to take this up, for your religion is not only in the kitchen, but also in the street and in the ponds where you bathe and wash your dirty clothes and wash your utensils and drink that water. Naturally, for dirty water, you will have cholera. So you will have to observe all hygienic laws. Science?
Yes, this is just a very interesting, almost stream of consciousness. Do you get that feeling? He's
yes.
back home. The first time in 25 years, we came. Was it the first time? Yeah. The first time that we got together here a few weeks ago, beginning of the school year, we realized, oh my goodness, he's back home in Dhaka. But friends realized that this wonderful Swami Abhedananda, one of the 16 direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, spent 25 years of his young life in the West. and maybe in America, 20 years in America, but said 25 altogether. He got to know us. And we were talking about silence and all that at the beginning. The whole meeting could be in silence if we were Quakers. He got to love us. That's the key. There was a rapport there. In New York, we say a rapport. There was an affinity that man had with us because he was seeking God, even in these people, even in the Gentiles, even in the Malaysia, people across the seventh ocean. And he saw it, and he felt it, and we felt it. So he imbibed the spirit of our times. So he's kind of like, still rattling around with some of those. So now we've switched the fact that in the West, there's a good deal of applied science. At least there was in this part of the 20th century. Swami Abhedananda, it's all right. He used to say things that were kind of like delightful. And he said that the West shows us how to live. And the East shows us how to die. In other words, the East shows us about the world beyond the apparent world of the senses and the daily life. But boy, howdy, Vivekananda himself went back. The Swami gave a wonderful lecture here last Sunday on his experiences at Harvard. He was a virtual student. I mean, he was there in person, but only thing was they didn't need to give him a mark, which was just dandy. He didn't have to, but he had a year of fellowship of studying, and our Swami Satyapriyananda. So his lecture was what I learned or what happened to me there. When Vivekananda went back to India, his message had been expanded from that which he brought with him when Sri Ramakrishna, his fully illumined teacher, if you remember, the cascading spirituality, said Jiva is Shiva, meaning inside each human being, the very essence, the very innermost part of that human being's being, is the infinity shining. So he comes, he says, I'm going to remember that. As he walks out of the room, Vivekananda, what I heard today. So he took it seriously. So here this man is coming back, just as Vivekananda came back, quite impressed with the work-action orientation and the science and the technology and all of that of the West as he went back to India and enhanced a few practices that they'd never seen in India, like taking up a broom and sweeping. Monks don't do that. How about some of the best schools, I mean the best, in India, hospitals, all of this, coronavirus, COVID-19. Our boys have hit the streets. So he says all these things. It's a little bit of a hodgepodge. But science, may I, or are you going to do it? You're going to do it. Please do. No, I want you to do some more because I don't know how long.
Microphone.
Okay.
Science, logic, and philosophy all are one with our religion. We do not separate science, logic, and philosophy from religion because religion is the whole thing, within which all other subjects are included. In India, we live religion, but in the Christian community, you will find religion is only for one day in the church because they do not live it and they do not even pretend to live it. Once in a while, they come to the churches and pray for a while, and after that, their religion is finished. In fact, they live a different kind of life. But as I have said before that, we live religion, eat religion, drink religion, and in short, religion is the basis or support of our life. Therefore, we should live up to the ideal.
How about that?
Sure.
All right. Bless your heart. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to keep him or have him, so I just want to make sure he reads as much as he can. Anyway, now we go back to where he came home to. He said, therefore, we should live up to the ideal, the universal ideal of the Vedantic religion or of Sanatana Dharma teaches us that we should educate our young men and women. And here, one thing is to be learned from the Europeans, and especially from the Americans. Imagine that. In America, you will notice that women are most enlightened. The teachers in all the schools are almost all women. I have seen that a deputy commissioner of police in New York is a woman. I can tell you, my friends, that a woman has better ability and strength and has better intellect and spirituality than men. If you study their character, you will find that they are more self-controlled and their minds are more concentrated. I will stand up for women under all conditions because I have seen them and also have learned from our master, Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna, that every woman is a representative of the Divine Mother. In Europe and America, you will notice that when men and women are walking together, women are allowed to go first, and then men. They do not elbow the women and put them behind as we do here in India. So this is an every size fits all evening. Women are always respected there. If you study the Manusmriti, you will find that woman has been described by Manu, who's the first man, and that is man, same word, Indo-European, as holy. Manu has said that a woman should not be struck even with a flower, and one mother is greater than 1,000 fathers. But we do not respect and regard them today. We do not pay our respect in regard to them today. Oh, that was your section. I really have to do this. I mean, it's like grace. This child sometimes takes on the role. I mean, the format. You see where I'm headed? A Martin Luther King Jr. As we say, Jr. She can be bold and speak the truth, as Lincoln must have said, as God chose us to speak the truth. So this whole page is going to be Xeroxed for you, just so that the volume was good. And, you know, he's talking about, the last, maybe you heard it, but it's just so fantastic. If you study the Manusmriti, and Smriti means Holy Scriptures, and Manu is the first human being. Yeah, the laws of Manu, there you go. You will find that woman has been described by Manu as holy. Manu has said that a woman should not be struck even with a flower. And one mother is greater than 1,000 fathers. Now, I just talked about the Christians going to church on Sunday. And what do we do with the rest of our week? And I think this was equal, what do they call it? Equal treatment, equal something. There's a word on for employment. You know, one size fits all. Now he's going to turn his attention to his Indian friend sitting there. He said, but we do not pay our respect and regard to them today. We do not even care to educate them. I'm sorry, it's a deficiency. Maybe one person out of 1,000 or more every 10 years will understand. I'd overdo it, but I can't help it because I got very little else to do. My folks came from the South 200 years ago, before the Civil War, to freedom in southern Illinois. And in Kentucky, grown men cry. Circa 1920-something, we do not even care to educate them. Footnote, small print. And I'll leave the women to decide this on their own. Tell us about it. The condition of education for women is quite different at present, and women are taking education properly. Well, it's quite true that if you sit around the dining room table of the Southern California Vedanta Society here, before and hopefully after the coronavirus. My friends, we will see women doctors whose mothers, if not they themselves, were born in India. We will see this and that field filled eminently in leadership roles by women. It's no big thing anymore, any big deal. It's not enough to get her through, the PhDs. It's all due to Vivekananda, because he got this red-headed Irish lady to see the vision and the dream that he had, that everyone should know that they're one with God, one with Brahman. One, the Atman is nothing but that shining reality. And Sister Deveda, as we call her, she dived in, fell into the pool in India. She went a knocking on the doors. Think of it, knocking on the doors in India, in Calcutta, pleading, having to plead. I mean, it was red-headed Irish. Who in the world, and what are you? What are you trying to sell? To let her daughters come out and go to her school. And because of that, there's just no two ways about it. Yep, India has leapt into the forefront. Nevertheless, my problem is the word education. The fact that we have not cared to educate huge segments of our population is what is at the root, among other similar exclusions, of a great deal of the unrest, social unrest. It's wonderful that we see in America today. The name George Floyd. George Floyd comes to my mind. Did you hear what his little daughter said, 5 years old? She said, my daddy has changed the world. Can't educate him. Can't get a good job. Can't look you straight in the eye and get a real answer and a real feeling. I see you, I understand. You're a man, you're a Brahmin. And it goes way, way back. It goes back to the days of Greece, where some gal, I forget the full story, but there is a story about it, and there's a little tiny flower out where your wildflower poppies are. Little golden flower, and they're very closely packed to the square inch. And it's named, the actual Latin name is named after this girl, dressed as a boy so she could go to school in Greece. And we spoke of have it. Pack you can to have it you had. Harvard got a big, healthy start 50 years earlier than whoever came, big school second. 1600s. Girls, can you guys get through this without getting upset, without getting emotionally apple cart over it? Would stand outside the windows, presumably of the one house which housed the whole school, with the windows open, listening, hoping to get a word of the life-saving wisdom. I think wisdom is knowledge which has gained emotional significance through the experience of a lifetime. I take great delight every time I think of it. Every time I think of it. Talk about the dark ages and the these ages and the those ages and the promise of this new millennium. That's the whole point. My sister, older sister, only natural-born sister I ever had, was 9 years older than me. No, they asked me, you got any sisters or brothers? I said, yeah, I had one sister. I said, no, I got 3.5 billion of them, and frankly, sometimes they're a bit of a care. My sister was born on August 10th. Can you feel it? We're ignorant of this for 2,000 years, you guys. We never really got it. And within some 10 days, I've got to find out the exact date. Maybe somebody here knows. After Sister was born, my mother was able, whatever that means. She'd been able all her life. And so had grandmother and great-grandmother and whoever. The mitochondrial link back to Mother Eve, our common feminine ancestor. If there had been anything going on at that particular time, to go and vote. My friends, the whole world has changed so radically. By that I mean the opportunities have changed. The openings up are changing. So they come to Vivekananda, these people. They're stirring of reform. Reform wasn't much of a word he used a lot in India, though there were people like Mohan Roy, child marriage, this, that, the other. Gotta do that. Gotta save the women. And ask Swamiji's opinion about something. He said, "Why are you asking me?" Vivekananda, this football player, you know what I'm saying? Why are you asking me? Go ask them. My job, your job, forgive me, is to stand back and stand by. Our job, he said, was to clear the underbrush. And it's a big job. And I like to think you know I do, that on September 11th, (1893) in Chicago, the world changed forever.
Our ideals are Gargi, Maitreyi, Krishna, and others. Kshana? Yeah, I guess so. Kshana. We have had the Rani of Gunchi, who fought against the English during the mutiny, wearing the uniform of a general. And the English historian did not know whether it was a he or she, and did not know that Rani means a woman. So we have all these beautiful examples in our history. We should therefore follow these ideals. These paragraphs are infinite, aren't they? Follow these ideals and educate the women and give them opportunities. It is said in the Manu Samhita that when a woman sheds her tears, those tears touch the throne of the Almighty, and curses of the Lord fall upon those who are the causes of shedding those tears. Therefore, I'll ask the blessings of women and ask them to save you and bless you and forgive you for what you have done in the past, and then your sins will be expiated. Go to the temple of the Divine Mother and say that you have made mistakes, and from today you will rectify your errors and will do justice to women. Read my lecture on women's place in Hindu history. Footnote. This lecture has been incorporated in the, I guess it's a booklet, India and Her People, which I gave in New York. There I pointed out that at the time of creation, man was divided into two halves. One half became male and the other half female. Ardha Naraswara. And that woman had equal rights with man. But where are women today in India? In America, you will find women's votes are equal in this respect with men. This has happened within the last 25 years through our teaching there.
Well, he's snapping his suspenders, but why not? The whole world is beginning to wake up. Okay.
This should be the ideal. Their Christian ideal, as you know, in the Old Testament, was that she was tempted by Satan and ruined man, and she brought disaster into the world. But my friends, we do not consider that story as correct. Our story is better. and it is more philosophical, rational, and correct. You want to take the rest of this?
Sure. Our story. Oh boy, is this needing correction here? No, it's okay. Our story's better. Well, let's see if you feel it is. And it is more philosophical, rational, and correct. Other nations are receiving ideals from us. It's almost like an anguished prayer. Hey, see me, you know. Uh-huh. And are getting glimpses into the Shastras, the scriptures. But pity is that we are not studying them, like in parenthesis, ourselves. And are not practicing even 1/100th of what we have inherited from our forefathers. It is a disgrace, and this mistake we will correct if we follow the footsteps of our illustrious brother Swami Vivekananda and live up to the ideals of Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna. Sri Ramakrishna represented India back to the immemorial times in the past. He was the embodiment, the synthesis. And Vivekananda was a bright, incredibly bright young Calcutta boy, of whom there have been, he being the prototype, many chips off the old block, almost tapping a cigarette, with the English education and certain kind of freedoms of the mind that it brought, and the idea of critical examination and analysis. I won't accept it till you demonstrate it to me. Prove it. Show me. Do you remember what Vivekananda said when he went to Ramakrishna? He'd been going all around Calcutta. And when I say bright, this doesn't begin to tell it. He had an eidetic memory, a photographic memory, apparently. And he read the Bhagavad Gita, he read the Encyclopedia Britannica. It sounds a little like. One point, somebody said, "You read the encyclopedia?" And whatever he'd done, he slipped through it, whatever, he read it. And this fellow must have said something to him, "Well, tell me something about such and such a topic." And he read verbatim from the page in the encyclopedia on that topic. So this bright young man is now beginning, and he's a lawyer, got a law degree, he's trying to think. And he's had some wonderful poetry, mystical poetry from Wordsworth in school, Scottish teacher, all this I know. But he started trying to find out about the life of the spirit in India, which really had not been much of a source of his attention, object of attention, you could say, during all this Western study time. So he'd go to various people that he'd find in India and say, "Have you seen God? Have you seen God? Have you seen God?" We've referred to this maybe last Friday. And when he went to Ramakrishna for the first time, he said, "Yes." He didn't say, "My boy, you have such a bright, shining face." He didn't say, some people say they have, and this is how they describe it. Ramakrishna was the first and only person that said, "Yes, I see him more clearly than I am seeing you." So this is kind of big stuff, because all of a sudden we've got India. We think about Vivekananda coming to the West and telling us about Eastern spirituality, the Parliament of Religions. India is finding out about itself too. And the truth of the matter is that they had neglected their infinite time, or not quite infinite time, but their long time, wonderful traditions, and they weren't practicing and all that. And he said it is a disgrace that we haven't practiced even 1/100th of what we've inherited, and this mistake we will correct if we follow the footsteps or in the footsteps of our illustrious brother Swami Vivekananda and live up to the ideals of Bhagavan Sri Ramakrishna. What a pair, the guru and disciple. Now we see that within 30 years after his death, we have spread his ideals all over the world, from Calcutta to the Antipodes, which is wherever you poke out at the other side of the earth if you go straight through. This is Vivekananda speaking of. Or in New York, we've spread the principles of Sri Ramakrishna, and he's respected. It is a big change. Now his photograph is worshipped and held as the ideal incarnation, an ideal incarnation of divinity, with a capital D. So it is now high time for you to recognize Sri Ramakrishna as your ideal, speaking to these Indian boys and girls. And if you do not recognize him as your ideal, meaning he's an ideal, kids. That's what he's saying. He is an ideal, and he was living just yesterday, and he's still living in our hearts. Said, you will be the loser. Sanatana Dharma, which properly established, remember we said that was the eternal religion last time, will bring freedom to our soul. And Sanatana Dharma is mysticism. Freedom in our community. Think of it. Freedom in our politics. And freedom as represented in the Shastras, the Holy Scriptures, the Shastras, which is the highest ideal of all religions, every one of them. That freedom is beautifully described in the Upanishads of what will happen when that freedom comes. The highest realization of oneness with divinity will come at that time, and then will also come what is mentioned in this verse, which I chant before I conclude, and here we are up the creek without a paddle. The best Swami and I can do is to dog paddle, to try to stay afloat. It would have been lovely if they translated it. We will do our best to try to get it for you by next time.
Well, he's going to give the gist of it.
Okay, good. That is, when that realization of the self, capital S, or Brahman comes, all doubts will cease forever. All the knots will be torn asunder, and all the individual souls will transcend the laws of karma and will become absolutely free from all limitations, and will enter into the infinite abode of eternal existence, endless bliss, and everlasting life. I've never heard it spoken better, brother. You do what you want to do.
Well, I didn't know what you wanted to do next. We didn't have time to talk about it, but the
Whatever you
next
say.
one in the book is called just the Vedanta philosophy.
Well, I think we can handle it. He's back home. Remember, kids, though, it's very important, because enthusiasm, which we've learned very recently, apparently from the Greek entheos, however they pronounce it, is God within, is the hallmark of a spiritual person. Her hair's on fire. Hey, hallelujah. Glory, hallelujah. What was his name? Hank Williams Jr.? Was that him? About, nothing but sorrow, and all day was night. He said, I've seen the light. I got high. But that enthusiasm must not be confused, especially in Vedanta, with our being a denomination, which we're not. Another religion, which we're not. A new river of faith, no. We ally ourselves, that is to say, officially, with no religion. No political party, Sorry. God country. Matthew 25. No, any little club, little thing. We're not here to tell people what to believe. We're not here to tell them my way or the highway. We're here to be of support to their view. This is the real reading of the Golden Rule, and as far as I can see, only the Baha'is got it right. It's not just that you should do unto others what you'd like them to do unto you. You got to find out first what he wants done and she wants done. I mean, the typical thing, you know, misreading, supervision, the Golden Rule. And somebody did that to me once, handed me a book of tiny print. It was over 1,000 pages. Here's a book, read it. Because, you know, they thought, well, I liked it, he probably will too. Our job is to be of service to each human being in the world to find their own way. It's a glorious thing. It's a glorious thing. So sure, why don't we do the Vedantic religion without a view of religion, without assuming that we're trying to tell people what to think, okay?
This is from a series of lectures given over a large span of time, 1907 to 1920. And this is just one of 17 lectures that were collected into a book. The first one's just the Vedanta philosophy. Since the year 1893, when our illustrious brother Swami Vivekananda delivered his address on the Vedanta philosophy before the Parliament of Religions at the World's Fair in Chicago, a genuine interest had been created in the minds of the people of this country to make a careful study of philosophy and religion of ancient India. Since that time, many of the wrong impressions and erroneous notions have been removed from the minds of the Western people by the writings of the Swami and such able scholars as the late Professor Max Mueller, Deussen, and others. But the majority of those who have not studied such writings often ask such questions. What is Vedanta? If you want to read this?
That's fine. I'm going to listen to you for a while. The sweet dulcet.
Is it the same as theosophy? Is it spiritualism? Is it Buddhism? Or is it the same as the New Thought movement, which makes the healing of disease the highest end of life? Next paragraph.
Oh, I don't want to go there. You go some more. That's fine. I think we should have this in our mind. Because really this is a little bit amorphous. It's not what you think it is. It's not another tent meeting with another tent. He said we should remember that the word Vedanta means end of wisdom. There you go.
Before we discuss the difference between Vedanta and theosophy or spiritualism or Buddhism or the New Thought movement, I guess every age has their New Thought movement, right? Which becomes the Old Thought movement in the next generation. We should understand clearly the fundamental principles of the most ancient and most sublime philosophy that has ever been given to the world. We should remember that the word Vedanta means the end of wisdom. By this, we do not, however, dogmatize that there is such a thing as the end of wisdom. We simply mean by Vedanta that wisdom, which includes all the different phases of knowledge gathered by studying nature and various branches of philosophy, psychology, etc., which include all the partial knowledge.
He's saying that wisdom.
Yeah. Okay, yeah, that didn't read quite right, did it? In ancient times, a disciple asked his spiritual master, quote, "By knowing what can one know everything in the universe?" Unquote. The seer of truth answered, quote, "By knowing the Brahman, the eternal infinite being, which is the source of all powers that are manifest in the phenomenal universe, one can know everything." Unquote. Knowing that Brahman alone, one ceases to search after anything higher or greater. that infinite source of all powers, all sciences, all philosophies, and all beauty and love is the goal of all religions and philosophies. Sorry. There we go. Therefore, the highest ideal of Vedanta philosophy is to lead the human mind to the realization of that eternal one, which is the ground of the world. By knowing that eternal truth alone, one can know everything. By understanding that eternal one, everything is understood. The highest concept of that absolute one has been expressed most beautifully in the Rig Veda, the most ancient scripture in the world. The Rig Veda says, quote, "That which exists is one. People call it by various names," unquote. That infinite absolute, or the eternal one, which is nameless, formless, is the foundation of this Vedanta philosophy. That one, with a capital O, has appeared as manifold through the manifestation of various powers which exist potentially in this source of all things and all beings. Therefore, unity in variety is the fundamental principle of Vedanta philosophy, and we must strive to see oneness which underlies the diversified phenomenon of the universe. Our aim should be to unify all these different manifestations into that one absolute being, and to make so many phenomena into one undivided mass of reality.
Capital R. My goodness, capital R. The very idea that religion is experiential at its foundation, which is probably the big swinging point, you know? Maybe that's what Eastern orientation is bringing into the world conversation, the world experience today. Is to me the whole enchilada. It's the whole story. So the fact is that the Swami is honoring the direct experience of the reality, the capital R, and he's placing everything upon that one, not some idea of it, not some book. It's just the whole big difference, swing point. So the Vedanta philosophy does not teach, this may be difficult, because after all, there are many ways of looking at this. And your way is the right way. That's the problem, you know. Truth is one. People call it by various names. Where you are on the path, and your relation with God is the big relation, is the big, the relation to reality. So there are different ways of looking at it, and they have names and all of that. But anyway, he's talking about the highest level of those people who have had the direct experience of union with God, and that's what the mystics in the West say they're striving for. That's the term they use in English, union with God. So he says that after that experience, the Vedanta philosophy does not teach that this world has been created by some extra cosmic being, with a capital B, who sits outside the universe and acts from heaven and molds matter by being outside of matter. But on the contrary, Vedanta philosophy teaches that this whole universe is nothing but the expression or manifestation of all the powers that are latent or exist potentially in that absolute being. Now, put as simply as one can, when we're all relaxed, you know, we've had our bowl of warm soup, tomato soup, we're all relaxed up. The Indian philosophy says that there's one infinity. You can't have two. Therefore, if one happens to like that thing to ponder on, chew like a horse for a while, you know, cows really do it. Cows probably the more many. They got 4 stomachs, and they ruminate. They do all these things. If you like the idea of there is one infinity, then nothing can be outside of it. The whole universe itself must be a part, if you will, must be just ultimately, we don't see it that way perhaps, infinity. It's pretty simple. And if you accept the idea of infinity, then anything else really is kind of like a self-contradiction. But that's the simplicity of it, all this stuff. So he's going on, and he says, he's not a personal God even in that sense. Now, this is going to be something a lot of people will not accept, and I will stand with them in their non-acceptance of it. If I feel in my heart and my way on the road and my path and all that God is like this, then God is like this. They say, and he has all these gods. I said, no, we don't. They said, yes, you do. You got 108 names just for one kind of concept of God as mother. And the fellow's saying, 108? You say we got 108? There are, and counting, tragically, 7 billion point, whatever it is tonight, gods. And if you're talking to me about graven images and idols, how about the ego? For starts. All right, so here we go. This view, which is that God is everything, then you see they've gotten to a point where they're not thinking of God exactly the way it's most easy and direct to think of God. And there are a lot of people who hold this as a very, very strong thing in their hearts, and I not only respect, I revere them. And I'm thinking of particular people. All right. He's not a personal God with a certain form as that of a human being with 2 hands sitting on a throne, etc., as we find in the Christian conception of God. But the God of Vedanta, that is to say, the completely illumined soul who has become one with God, or realizes that she's one with God, is immanent, inside, not outside, and resident in nature. In other words, talk about Jesus was a carpenter. When God made the universe, if you will, thinking of those on those lines, he not only was the carpenter, the efficient cause, but the material cause as well. These are the 2x4s and the nails. God spins out the universe like a spider, like a web from within herself. All right? We're getting there. He dwells in nature. He dwells in us and in each individual soul. If you're going to talk about individual souls, he is personal, impersonal, and beyond both. Now here's where the lights go on. You turn out the lights, these senses shine. And I would just say, please don't feel bad if the way he's talking tonight isn't the way you see it tonight, because he's not being narrow-minded. He's trying to be very inclusive, and he proves it right here. He appears as personal to one who believes in a personal God. He appears as impersonal, like love itself. Can you understand? The very fact of love itself. To one who has risen above that state of dualism and has unfolded that spiritual sight by which he can see the presence of divinity, capital D, in every living and in every inanimate object of the universe. Well, but there is still higher conception of that being, capital B, and it is the absolute oneness of spirit, which is the reality, capital R, of the universe. Now here we go. Put on your hat. You're on the merry-go-round. You're on the, you're on the, what do you call it, the roller coaster. Jesus the Christ realized that oneness and said, I and my Father are one. So if we realize that oneness, which was realized by Jesus the Christ and other prophets, we shall say that we and our Father are one. In quotes, I am He, end quote, dash, Soham.
I am that the same being who dwells in the sun, moon, and stars, and who is the infinite source of intelligence and life in the organic and inorganic forms of this universe. And I believe that's our time to. Oh, I've got a couple minutes,
Well,
so that's a nice place to stop. Yeah. So.
You want to poll the delegation?
Sure. Yeah, let's conclude, and we'll save the rest for next time. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Filled with Brahman are the things we see. Filled with Brahman are the things we see not. From out of Brahman floweth all that is. From Brahman all, yet is it still the same. Peace, peace, peace.